One of the reasons I no longer believe in the God of the Bible is something I wrestled with for a very, very long time.
I have a feeling you probably should have wrestled a little longer.
It has to do with the contradictions I found in the Bible.
Well, usually if somebody finds contradictions in something they believe, they'll go looking for an answer. And since I know there are answers for everything you're going to bring up, that means you are looking for reasons to not believe.
And before I go any further, I understand that contradictions really only trouble people who were actually taught that the Bible's infallible or inerrant, that it's exactly what God intended without error in every single detail.
Yeah, that could trouble people. And good thing that's not what we're taught. See, we shouldn't believe that the Bible doesn't have errors, because it does. In some of the manuscripts, there are spelling errors, there are grammar errors, there are copyist errors. But God's word is what's infallible. What God chooses to say never contradicts. So overall, the Bible is the most historically reliable document in the history of mankind, and that can even be stated by opponents of Christianity. So you really should have searched a little harder, but let's see what else you have.
Not all Christians believe that, and I understand that. Many see the Bible as sacred or inspired or just meaningful to them.
Well, the Bible does say that it's inspired. It says that Scripture is God-breathed. Peter says that they wrote as they were carried along or carried away by the Spirit.
They also understand it's written by human beings, it's shaped by culture and perspective.
Culture and perspective is in there. It influences it, but it doesn't shape it. You're putting a lot of other things in there that aren't true. I can write something according to American culture, but not have American culture shape it. I can say that God is a hero of liberty. Just because Americans talk about liberty a lot doesn't mean that shaped that truth.
And if that's you, contradictions may not feel like a deal breaker at all. But for me, man, they mattered deeply.
And if they mattered that deeply, you should have been looking for answers, but I have a feeling you were simply looking for an out.
Because I was taught that my trust in God depended on this book being perfectly reliable in every way.
Then you were taught wrong. Our faith is in God, the one who spoke the words, the one who wrote through the original authors, not in the copyist's ability to not ever make a mistake in spelling or grammar or anything else. Even through the hands of humans, what minor errors there are, again, it is still the most accurate ancient document in the history of mankind. That should have given you something to cling to, but your faith is not in a book. Your faith is in who the book talks about.
So the question I couldn't escape over time was really this: how many false statements or contradictions can exist before a book isn't trustworthy any longer, the way I was taught to trust it?
Depends on how you define a contradiction. Again, spelling errors, grammar errors, and copyist errors are not contradictions. There's nowhere in the Bible where it says God is yellow and then God is blue. That would be a contradiction.
And once I started looking closely, I just couldn't stop seeing them. I'm going to give you several examples.
All right, now if I give you plausible answers, does that mean you're going to be a Christian again? Because if not, then that wasn't your only reason for leaving.
In one account in the Old Testament, God incites David to take a census, and then there's another account of the same story where Satan incites David to take the census. It's the same event, different cause, can't both be true.
Yes, they can. In Job, God allows Satan to do some things to Job, and that's exactly what happens here. You just see it from two different angles instead of one story. Not really that hard to explain. But I have a feeling that some of these were not your original concerns.
In that same story, one version says there would be a punishment of 7 years of famine, and the other story says it would only be 3 years. Both can't be correct.
Sure it can, because it depends on how you constitute a famine. Do you count it by when the rain stopped or when they ran out of food? Again, not that hard to answer.
Genesis gives us two accounts of creation. In Genesis 1, humans are created last, after plants and animals. In Genesis 2, humans are created first, before plants and animals. Same book, different order, can't both be true.
And that just shows bad study techniques on your part, my friend, because Genesis 2 is simply zooming in on Adam and Eve when he made them, and it simply states that he had, past tense, made plants and animals. So no, the order's not different, it's just stating it in a different order. If I come into the house and then I say I got out of the car, that doesn't mean that I got out of the car after I got in the house.
When you get to the resurrection, the differences really multiply, and this was very challenging for me. The Gospels don't even agree on who went to see Jesus' tomb.
Yes, they do. A bunch of women, and then some disciples. Not that hard. They don't have to literally give you a manifest of everyone who walked over there.
They don't agree on how many people were there. They don't agree on what they saw when they got there.
Yes, they do. They agree the tomb was empty. Other details are just other details. So what? That just gives it more credibility to being an eyewitness account.
One gospel says an angel appeared. Another says a young man was there. Another says 2 men were there. Another says 2 angels.
Because man doesn't mean human. It means person, being. Angels are persons. Angels are beings. So clearly, there were 2 angels there, and 1 spoke. Again, not a problem for an eyewitness account.
Luke says Mary and Joseph lived in Nazareth, traveled to Bethlehem for a census where Jesus was born, and then they returned home.
Eventually, because Egypt wasn't necessarily part of the story. You don't have to mention literally everything he did. Do we have to write down his toilet schedule?
But Matthew tells a totally different story. Jesus is born in Bethlehem, wise men visit, the family flees to Egypt, and only later, then they settle in Nazareth.
Right, so they confirm Bethlehem and then Nazareth. Just because one didn't write about Egypt doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Even the details of Jesus' death don't line up. Mark places Jesus' death after Passover. John places the death before Passover. Those both can't be true.
Because one is using a Roman clock, the other's using a Jewish clock, and either they mark their days by sun up or sundown. That's the difference. That's easy to look up. You can look that up on Google.
Matthew says Jesus rode into Jerusalem on both a donkey and a colt. Don't know how that happened, but that's what it says.
So you didn't read it? So it was a foal of a donkey that no one had ever ridden on before. It literally tells us that. So if you understand how beasts of burden worked back then, you would guide the younger one by leading its mother. So literally, they would pull the mother along while Jesus rode on the young one. And the young one would just naturally follow its mother. Again, just a little bit of research.
The other Gospels describe just one animal.
So the other Gospels only mentioned one animal because he was only riding on one. He didn't put one cheek on one and one cheek on the other.
Matthew and Mark say both criminals that were crucified with Jesus mocked him, but Luke says one of them actually defended Jesus and actually said to be remembered when Jesus came into his kingdom.
Right, so one changed his mind. So what? Isn't the point of your whole video that you changed your mind? He just made a better choice.
Even Jesus' final words differ. In one gospel, my God, why have you forsaken me? In another gospel, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And another one simply says, it is finished.
None of which say those are his last words. They're the last words recorded before his death by those particular accounts, but none of them say these are his last words. So that's pretty easy to explain, isn't it?
And then you've got Judas' death. I'm sure you've heard this. Matthew says Judas hanged himself and the priests bought a field. But Acts says Judas fell to his death and that he bought the field.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one because it's so easy to explain. If you're going to hang yourself, where are you going to hang yourself over? Maybe a cliff? And so when the rope broke or his body decomposed, one of the two, he fell down and his bowels gushed out. Acts does not say that's how he died. It simply says that's what happened to his body. And so he did buy the field because the money he received to betray Jesus, he gave back. They used that money to buy the field, his money. So his act of treachery bought the field. Again, not a contradiction, just some explanation.
I could go on, and these aren't small copy errors. They're different versions of the same events.
You're welcome to go on because every single thing you brought up is old hat, old news, and I don't have to dodge a thing. I all have explanations, and there's a lot harder things to explain than anything you brought up. So again, if these challenged you enough to leave your faith, then I would say you were looking for a way out.
And I tried to harmonize them. I really did, like for years.
So try again.
And you can always explain away maybe 1 or 2 or, 5.
Or all of them.
But eventually I had to ask myself, if this book is perfectly true in every detail, if it's inerrant, infallible.
That's not what inerrant or infallible means, but go on.
Why does it require so much explaining to make it appear that way?
To appear that way? No. It requires explanation because it was literally written by 4 eyewitnesses. Mark was writing for Peter, Matthew wrote for himself, John wrote for himself, and Luke interviewed witnesses. So when you have 4 eyewitness accounts, they're all going to give different details that they saw or experienced. This is no different than what normal police officers do when they're talking to people about what they saw. So there's nothing that has to be explained away. It's simply piecing the puzzles together.
For me, that question didn't lead to anger. It really led to grief. And then slowly it kind of led to honesty, just being honest about where my trust broke in the Word and why I no longer believe in the God that I was taught that the Bible revealed.
So, since I gave you all plausible answers, does that mean you're going to choose to believe again? Somehow I doubt it.
Look, I know others think differently about this. Some of you are able to harmonize all this in your own mind.
I can do it verbally and even on a video on social media.
But I just couldn't. I couldn't unsee these contradictions. And if it was a perfect God giving me a perfect word, it wouldn't have these contradictions.
Right, because they're not contradictions. You were looking for reasons to get out. And maybe you had some grief about it. Maybe you had some sadness. But that doesn't change the fact that you accepted it instead of actually looking for the answers.
If you thought about this differently or you've wrestled with it yourself, I'd really like to know what you think about it.
I think you need to look again, and I'll make you a deal. If you message me, I'll be happy to have conversations with you.